Are you opening today? Is Allie opening today?
I can open. Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Allie Privet. I'm here with Peter Hostrasser. How are you, Peter?
I'm doing great. I'm just sitting around listening to the fireworks get ready. And yeah, we're right around July 4th. So happy birthday, USA.
America.
America.
I actually think this holiday is a turning point for educators in the summer. There's some that are like, you know, before the 4th of July feels like full freedom. And actually, like, I've heard more than one educator say that after the 4th of July weekend holiday passes, that's when they start thinking about the school creeps it back in, and they feel like so they're on like a countdown
Yeah.
and it feels like summer's over. I've heard that so many times and I'm like, what? 4th of July, you still have like a month, but it begins kind of the second half of summer, so to speak. So we're before that right now with this episode, but it's maybe creeping in to some people's minds.
I think it works right after Nikki too, because it's like, okay, so hopefully you've recuperated. But as we're continuing this Crush It series in the summertime, well, guess what? We just heard a whole bunch of great things on how to get started with goal setting and what are some of the actionable steps going into that. So I think we're in a perfect place here in the beginning of July to set off some fireworks.
Ooh, yeah. I did want to say, so it was a part of last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back, listen to Nikki Green's episode,
Mhm.
because Peter made up interesting points. So we do talk about skydiving and how it relates. It is education. There's a lot of
Mhm.
learning involved in the process, but you said something interesting, Peter, and you're like, it wasn't actually getting out of the plane that scared me as much as breaking my ankle on the ground. That was like the thought that you had.
Mhm.
And well, I will tell you that the hardest part of skydiving is the ground, but also,
That sounds good.
okay,
That should be a bumper sticker right there. Sorry.
I cannot take credit for that line. It's
Okay.
like a common skydiving, ism.
Mhm.
However, it so very much relates because it's this idea of being grounded. Um, and right, you can be like literally up in the clouds, actually, with your ideas and with your visions and dreams. And you can have a vision board, you can have all of that. But if you're not grounded in like what you want and like the change that you want, then you're not going to achieve it. You're going to be
Mhm.
like it's just not going to happen. And I think that the mindset can be an overlooked factor in change and in disrupting education. Is like maybe you have your mindset like ready to go, but you're not probably on an island in the changes that you want to make. So it can be, and we've had this conversation with other people about how like you might have to, like with Jeanette's episode about a month ago now,
Mhm.
you kind of maybe have to play by the rules or kind of get in with the community and build those relationships to change minds, right?
Mhm.
Like first you have to change your own, but then part of the summer can be like, how can I shift the mindset of myself and those I'm working with in order to make those changes? How do I get grounded in the change? And that was something that I kept thinking about as Nikki was talking, because it really, in skydiving, it starts and ends on the ground, but like your goals do start and end with your mind. Like
Mhm.
you can or you can't, and you're right. And it's based off of what you think internally first.
Yeah, that is so interesting. There's so many pieces that she kind of just like let us think about. Man, it's really hard to get people going unless they are understanding what the tools they need to get going, right? And I'm just basically rephrasing what you just said. So I'm thinking about youth and how a lot of them have big goals and big dreams and big aspirations. But Nikki said something, and you alluded to it as well, is the training is going to be harder than reaching the goal. And I think that when you, and that comes with consistency. We really didn't touch on consistency. Resiliency was another term that she uses, but the consistency of doing something, right? It can't be one and done. And you've got to go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 to 3 to 4, not like 1 to 100, right? And I think like that mindset, it takes practice, and you might go 1 to 2 to 2 to 3, and then you're like, and then you're like, wait, I really want to get back onto it. And you got to go back to 1, right? And I think about her in her endurance sports. I absolutely hate endurance sports, by the way. It's not that, nothing against anybody. I just don't do it. I guess
It's
everything
interesting.
is an endurance sport, though. I guess if you look at it that way, I don't know.
It is. I mean, like you also mentioned in last week's episode, you're like, you've heard of entrepreneurship classes being
Hmm.
taught in conjunction with running marathons.
Right.
And speaking of which, I took a marathon training class and have run multiple marathons, but I took a
Yep.
marathon training class in college. And it because I like to run and I set
Hmm.
this ridiculous goal. And I should preface this with I was not a runner. I
Hmm.
didn't like running. In high school, I chose volleyball as my main sport because
They do.
there was the least amount of running.
Yep.
And then I like Forrest Gump one
Mhm.
day in college. I woke up and I was like, I think I'll go running. No joke. I ran like almost 2 miles and it was by far the furthest I'd ever run. This
Hmm.
was my sophomore year of college.
Wow.
And like I then became like I would run almost every day,
Hmm.
2 to 4 miles, nothing like super far
Hmm.
relatively to a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And it was a year later, after about starting running, that I signed myself up for this marathon training class. The furthest I think I'd ever run was maybe 5 miles at this point.
Hmm.
And I mean, and I failed. I did not complete I didn't fail the class, but
Hmm.
I got injured. The ramp up period
Hmm.
was caused me to kind of injure my IT band and knee.
Hmm.
But and I could have let that derail me. Like I did end up running a half marathon, so I got halfway there. But then I then signed up for another one and I got injured again. Same kind of issue, just overtraining. And it wasn't until the third go,
Hmm.
and I had actually finished college and I joined a marathon training club, a running club in my hometown of Minneapolis where I was living at the time. And it was through that community that I was able to complete my first full marathon. There were so many setbacks. It took a long time, so
Hmm.
many miles.
Yeah.
And um and eventually I did complete it. But like to people who set ridiculous goals and complete them, there's usually like a really long journey in there.
Mm.
And I think it's sometimes good to kind of tease that out because the mindset comes from all of the setbacks. Like when we started this series with Robert Peppo, like he didn't build his, his amazing, incredible business that he's now franchising and stuff overnight. It's been years and
Hmm.
years of hard work and putting in the work on the slow seasons, right? Like
Hmm.
I was running miles in the wintertime for a spring, summer, or fall marathon. Like it's not like, oh, blue skies and 75. I'm running on the beach every day and it's just beautiful out. There's work to be put in. I just the idea of like disrupting and crushing it is going to mean a journey that you don't anticipate, and there likely will be quote unquote failure, setbacks, all of this stuff. But so many people, and like what we're trying to really unlock here with the summer series is like getting you to whoever you are, whatever your goals are, to encourage you that like you can do it wherever you
Hmm.
are in your journey. Like even if you've taken a step back, you've had to go back, you've had to, you're not at the pinnacle, you're not at the peak, trying to help you get there, and like the mindset is such a key component of that. And the community, like those two things, like I was so determined I was going to run that marathon. And then I surrounded myself with people who had run marathons.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what you got to do in education. There's so many kind of parallels there. I mean, honestly, like entrepreneurship is a marathon. It
Yep.
is. And for Nikki to kind of put those two things together, I was like, wait a minute, this actually does happen. As an entrepreneurship teacher, students see the Instagram goals, right? And I love that term, by the way. They see the end goal, the end result of it, but they don't really see the blood, sweat, and tears that go into something like that. In the today's day and age, I think it's something that, it's just a matter of fact, like people can see a lot more with the technology and pieces like that. So what I wanted to kind of like mention on today, kind of reflecting about this, is as educators, there's a couple of things that came to mind. Um, and I'm not sure if it was my buddy's dad who said this or somewhere this quote came out, is you can teach a lifetime like of a subject and just dig in and do some crazy awesome things, or you can teach the same subject for 25 years. Right. And it was the way that he worded it. I'm sure I screwed it up, and I know I've said it before on the podcast, but like that to me, that's where you just get in that safe zone. You know what? I'm going to go up in the airplane and I'm not going to jump out, and I'm just going to wait, and I'll just land with the airplane. Right. It's a lot of teachers get that way. And me included, there were a couple of years there where you're burnt and you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and you're fighting against the grain. What I want to say is, once you get into a point here, now we're right in the middle of or starting July here, look around you, look for things to be a beginner in your subject.
Mhm.
Everything we teach in school has something to do with life, right? Yes, even the Pythagorean theorem has something to do with life. But if you keep your eyes open and are looking around for these things, especially when you have the time, you're going to get inspiration. And then or both, like get yourself surrounded by people who are in that mindset, and it makes it easier. And that's why I wanted to just kind of encourage our educators out there that, what, like, you don't have to teach the same exact way, the same exact subject, right? I don't care how over the shoulder your administration is, they're not going to be there day in and day out. You can have fun. And going back to what Nikki said about, really enjoying being a beginner, that is, I think, so key in this whole concept of things, of how to just really stay in the moment, stay a lifelong learner, and then just, you know what? Yeah, change is awesome, right? I don't hear a lot of teachers say that, but change is awesome.
Yes.
And it's something that we can play around with and just jump into. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with that one.
I 100% agree with change being a positive. It can be very easy to get stuck in your ways or in a certain, way of teaching, practice of teaching, learning, etc. And I like what Nikki said, that she moved a lot as a kid, and while that was challenging, it did allow her to reinvent herself, which I think is a super interesting point in education. Like, in education, in order for there to be, like, sometimes big change or whatnot, you have to either be willing to reinvent yourself where you're at or change your location, and then nobody knows what you've done or how you've taught or anything like that. There
Mhm.
is power in changing, and considering the market right now as an educator, maybe that is something that you think about. I don't know. I mean, it just throwing an idea out there. Um, but if you're not, if you're like, I'm okay with where I'm at, but I really do have these big goals for myself, and at any level, whether you're a student, you're an educator, you're an administration, you're part of the community, right? This summer is a great time to learn something new, something you are not good at, but you're interested in. It needs to
Mhm.
be something that you can have parallels, like, you know, um, maybe it's carpentry or painting or I don't know, running. Okay. And I do think about like the things you're going to learn that, from an expert in that is going to, and the roadblocks that you face is going to have you reflect on your expertise in ways that you would otherwise have blinders on. So sometimes
Mhm.
in order to crush your goals, you need the right mindset, but then you also have to be able to put yourself in that beginner seat, which can be very difficult.
Mhm.
But it does help if if you are doing something new in your life, because you realize you're like, oh, I did never knew that before. And when you have that aha moment, you then can be like, okay, if I was learning the subject that I teach, or if I was, you know, uh, taking a class that I am struggling with, how can I apply this to that area and to the goal that I have set for myself? And I love the idea of reinventing yourself and then trying new things that Nikki
Mhm.
brought to us.
I think it's easier. Well, I mean, it lends itself to education as an educator, right? If you're a high school teacher, you're going to get a different set of students in a class, and you might have had them in another class, like maybe they were in this science class, but now you're teaching them a different, like maybe biology to chemistry or whatever. But they don't know you as that teacher, right, of
Mm.
that subject. Or like even, as an elementary school teacher, like you're going to get a whole new set of students. Say you're a first grade teacher, you're going to get another set of first graders coming through. So you get to kind of reinvent who you are in that capacity. I think one of the other things that you can do as a learner is it's constructivism. I don't More and more teachers are like asking. So two of the things that Nikki said is like, surround yourself with people and then ask questions, right? And really, and that's why I always look at it as a business, transaction. Education is like I'm trying to help you figure out something in the business world or science world or history world or whatever. Asking your clients tons of questions. Kids love to answer questions that aren't just like read this and answer this. I'm talking about like, what have you experienced with chemistry? What have you experienced with, math? Like, how you feel about it? And then these conversations can bring a lot out. So kind of going back to what Nikki was saying about those two things is yeah, get into groups. Go back into any of our listeners and just start picking and choosing who do you want to like connect with, because almost everybody we work with is on LinkedIn. They're out there. And then also, just start asking those questions. I just really, really like that. Ask questions. Um, and you do feel like you're sometimes over asking questions. Sometimes it's really harder when you get older, because you're like, oh, you didn't know that. But you know what, that still opens up dialogue. And I think, I had lunch with a previous student who's going into his junior year of college, and he's had some rough times in college. And we were talking about it, and he has this opportunity for an internship next summer. That is his girlfriend's like parents, and she said, "I will take you on an internship," and she travels and does some sales and different things like that. And he was hesitant because he didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm like, that's the point. You need to take your step, take your leap, right? Because
Mhm.
she's going to open up so many doors, because that training is going to be hard, because you're going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to be like yourself, but you're going to learn so much. And I think, all those things just kind of came together in last week's podcast and this discussion.
Totally. And we were hitting a lot on, the new skydiving students that I'm working with. And,
Hmm.
even people who research the sport ahead of time and like or have someone, kind of talk them through. There is nothing that can prepare you for facing your fear in real time. And
I'll agree with that.
you've done static line
I've done a
jumps and
static line, and yes, I don't remember getting on the strut, so that's how much like adrenaline was pumping. But
that's right. And even if, people have done tandems, the
mhm,
training just doesn't prepare you for getting to the door of the airplane and before you take that leap. And sometimes with our goals, it's like there comes a point where you do have to take the leap. You have to face the fears, the unknown, the uncomfortable. Like you're just not going to know everything. And we've heard this before with people who have started programs and really been disruptors of education is like it's not like they had a playbook. They were creating the book as they were going, and
mhm,
there were definitely setbacks. It's definitely a marathon. It's not done, right? Like the programs and projects that we talk to all the time are ongoing and evolving. Like we brought Robert Peppo back to talk about the changes in a year and a half. And like, yes, he has seen exponential growth in that time. But I'm pretty sure before that it was like these little baby steps and probably some like, ups and downs. And yeah, okay, we're catching him at this curve,
mhm,
because we wanted to have this awesome, crushing it, relentless summer series, but it's not without like literally facing your fears and like whatever makes you uncomfortable, whatever is like that mental block is what you have to overcome to move forward. Like
mhm.
it's just going to keep coming at you
Yeah.
until you overcome it, right? That's the mindset piece of change, of disruption,
Mhm,
and so much mental. Skydiving is 90%, I'd say even 95% a mental sport.
hmm,
I mean, and unlike the fear that you have to overcome is in your mind. And once you overcome it, then you can enjoy the freedom of the jump and everything. But it's not without its challenges. And any goal, big or small, is gonna have at some point that like uh check at the door, like, are you really gonna jump or are you gonna
Yep.
land with the
Yeah, there's
plane?
a door there.
There's a door there.
There's nothing underneath, but there's a door there. Which that's a great analogy, and I never even thought of skydiving as mental, but yeah, it is. I mean, it makes so much sense. I think one of the things that I want to pass on to educators who are listening to this, and in one sense or another, we're all educators. You hear a lot of it. I listen to a lot of hip hop, and when when there's always lines out there. Yeah, my teacher said I couldn't do this, and then I did it, and da da da. Right, minus all the expletives and such. Paying homage to Biggie Smalls there, but I think like one of the things that we can do as educators is instead of like, because we do it with every unit, we do it with every, kind of concept that we're teaching. We break it down in the small parts, right? So
Mhm.
when somebody comes up to us and says, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to be a professional athlete, or I'm going to be a hip hop artist, or I'm going to be a skydiver, whatever." Instead of, and you practice this because you're going to mentally practice as well. And this is all in the chameleon mindset. But instead of saying, yeah, I don't think so, start to say, okay, what have you done so far to get there? So let's back it up. Great. What are the steps that you've done? And you do that, and guess what? We're starting to get not only ourselves starting to think about that process, but also get the other person, the youth or whoever, like and start them thinking about, okay, what have I done? Some people just want attention. They're just like, yeah, I'm going to be the fastest drag racer on the city street here tonight. And I'm like, okay, hold on. But are you interested in, this? And then what have you done? I really like that approach. And again, like for our own goals, right? I really want next year you, like you said, I'm not going to do well at this, or I'm going to do well with this. Either way, you're right. Right. So if this coming up school year that you have coming out is going to be a great one, or if it's going to be a terrible one and you're just going to chalk off another, year 16 or whatever you have, you're right. So, start to get into that mindset. What have you done to make it a better year? And then what do you still need to do? There is pain here. There is pain. There is pain. Oh my gosh, there's pain. You got to put the work in. A lot of people will say, and I know you've seen this too, Allie, like, oh, you're such a natural. You're so good at this. Yeah. We put in like time. We're having a podcast here about things. But what else have you done instead of excuses? So that's right. We're right there in July. So that's why I'm like, let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. I mean, if your mind has been holding you back from the fireworks you want to see in your life, this is the podcast and last week's episode to like make that change and get after your goals and crush it, because it's not, I rebuke the people who say like after 4th of July, summer's over. No, it's not. It's heating up.
Yep.
Yep. July and August are like the hottest months of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. So you've got plenty of time to crush your goals, and you can still be poolside and you can still be making progress towards whatever the bigger picture is. No, like checking off anything on the list towards that goal is movement forward. And I'm a personal fan of James Clear. He's the author of Atomic Habits. We've definitely mentioned this book before on the podcast. It's very well known, but if you haven't read it, it's great. And one of the things that he talks about is, like it is consistency. And it's like, okay, you can take a day off, from your goals. That's not a problem. It's when you take 2 or 3 and you get off the wagon is really how you lack progress. And so this is a slower season for most people. And yes, relaxation is great. But if you have a bigger goal than what you are currently doing at any level in your life, in school, etc., participating in the community of school, then now is the time to put in the work. And maybe it requires some late nights, early mornings and whatnot, but if that's what it's going to take for that change to happen, that's what it's going to take.
You're right on there. So let's just get these Roman candles fired up. Let's get some bottle rockets going. And let's launch them, because I don't know if I have much to add to that, because this is your sign to, in making a beginner as fun, like enjoying it again, like Nikki was saying, and just be a beginner and reinvent yourself right now. You will thank yourself come November. You will. I guarantee you will, as an educator, even as a student. So if you're a student listening to this, same thing, right? So get crazy, get ahead of the curve, have some fun, get consistent with it. And you know what? I mean, this is the cheesiest thing to say to a skydiving instructor, but the sky's the limit. So I think we'll end off there. But hey, everybody have a wonderful 4th of July from the Disrupt Education podcast. We appreciate you guys. Pass it on. We're continuing, going to crush it. We've got some interesting guests coming up all the way through July and August. We don't really take a break. I mean, we do take breaks, but we don't really take a break. So we'll keep that there. But again, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you all. For Allie Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Hey, we'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.